Salutations, everyone. Welcome back to another Total Warhammer 3 guide. I'm Lord Forwind, of course. Thank you for watching. So today we're going over Arbaal, the Undefeated of the Challengers of Khorne. He's a very interesting character. He plays only like one other, and that's the orange lizardman, whose name I never get right. He's all about hunting and everything. Hunting strong opponents in particular. So we're going to jump right into it, but before we do, if the video helps you, please do like, comment, subscribe. It really does help. And let's get right into it. So Arbaal, the Undefeated, his sole goal is to seek out challenges of Khorne, fighting difficult battles to get more Khorne's favor and get various rewards. In fact, that's his victory condition. You have to complete 8 of them. It's not hard to complete 8 challenges of Khorne. In fact, the harder thing may be to loot, occupy, raise, or sack 30 settlements. You do get a really cool chainsword, which is quite interesting. To complete a long campaign, you need 15, and you have to wipe out a Zazel. I wouldn't really worry about that much. Really, the challenges of Khorne is the main focus of your gameplay. If you focus on that, you really don't need to expand at all. So, how do we get Khorne's favor? Well, you get it from battles. You also get it from various missions, but that's fairly unreliable. You get the majority from challenges, and we'll go over challenges in a little bit. You do use it to get various boons, which by and large you're going to want to toggle on and off. I'll talk about that once we unlock that. And traveling, as well as the Wrath of Khorne. So, you have access to the general Khornite Skull Throne mechanics. The big ones that are going to become particularly useful for you is really, these are all fairly useless except for Wound in the World. Getting the ability to summon Bloodletters, really useful, especially since you're going to be having one army fight another army in basically even combat. Having the ability to get an extra unit to the battlefield, always useful. And of course that uses skulls, which you will get from battles, among other things, but by and large you're going to get them from kills. So before we go over the actual challenges, let's go over the starting location expansion, mainly because it's relatively short compared to most factions. So for those of you who don't know where this guy starts, he starts right here. So here is Kislev, which probably everyone knows where Kislev is. You start right to the east of it. You're south of the Everchosen. You're north of the Chaos Gods. And by and large, no one's really gonna bother you. I played this on Legendary, and pretty much everybody left me alone. It was really weird. You start here, sadly, with a minor settlement as your capital, Stormvrak Mount. It's a decent starting one, considering you're all about mortal troops as this faction of Khorne. Just like right there, that gets you basically all the units you're going to need for the majority of your campaign. Other things you could create here, you can always get your Warhounds as well as your Forsaken and stuff. But my personal opinion is you should probably pick something that gives you some control and upkeep. Khorne's economy is not the best unless you're conquering lots of stuff, and as this faction you may not be rampaging around the map as much as others. So the decreased upkeep is particularly useful since you'll probably be in your capital region the most out of pretty much any faction in the game. You kind of live around your capital, especially if you're teleporting to fights and stuff. Now, your main opponent is Ogres. Honestly, it's a bit of a joke. Move this guy in, fight the battle, conquer Pillar of Skulls. You're going to want to build up troops. So let's just quick do these battles. And at the beginning, you want to ignore tribute and skulls. You just want replenishment. Your goal in the first couple turns is quite honestly to secure a starting region. After that, you're going to be mainly accomplishing missions. Now, you do have a choice here. I'm not a particular fan of using blood hosts as this faction in particular. You can. The reality is merely either sacking it or raising it is not a bad move because eventually you'll get it all backed. So I would do Skulls for the Skull Throne right now. You're going to be the only one in the region for quite a while, so the odds of you getting it through the Khornite free colonization mechanic, which is, like a 5% chance, pretty solid. Your big one you're going to want to occupy is Karak Dum, mainly because that's a larger settlement, and you'll get bigger bonuses from that. Now, of course, the downside of not occupying it is we will have to do global recruitment stance to get more units. So if you do occupy it, you don't have to go into this stance. It's a little bit easier. Really, you can do whatever you want. You're going to want to snag Route Marcher and then Blood Feast. I'll make this as quick as I can. This guy here, replenish troops. The big thing for your faction is getting replenishment going on your units. So wherever that shows up in various trees or text, you're going to want it. Now, thankfully, this faction has this faction leader, I should say. Champion of the Blood God gets global recruitment duration down 1, as well as greater strength for your mortal units, which is really nice. You get this Hellblade, which is really cool. Which means you can basically recruit to your army anywhere in the world in 1 turn. Now, what units are you going to want to use here? I'm not going to go through all the Khornite units. You're only going to really want to use human units until you get to the elite units. My advice is get some Marauders of Khorne dual weapons, but also a lot of Chaos Warriors of Khorne. These guys don't die nearly as fast as the dual weapons. This, you can see the increased upkeep cost. These are very solid units. You don't need them to kill much. You just need them not to die so that your leader and your heroes can kill them as well. Now, once you've done that, obviously you march on, take out the Skull Camp, take out Karak Dum, take out Tribe Slaughter. It's not particularly hard. You'll do it in a handful of turns. After that, you really don't need to expand anywhere. If you want, you can raid and you could conquer the Chaos Dwarves, but the reality is your gameplay cycle does not encourage that. So we're going to jump forward a good chunk of turns, and we'll look at the actual challenge mechanics and other stuff there. Okay, here we are 50 turns more into the game. So turn 51, this is when I won a short victory. I just wanted to illustrate the point that you really don't need to expand anywhere else. Our main base really is just a fortified stronghold for us to retreat back to and heal up. As you can see, we didn't bother to conquer anything in terms of we have no allies, we have no military allies, defensive or military, sorry. We also really have the only enemies we have are the people we've been rushing around the map fighting. And everyone else relatively doesn't care about us. It's quite strange. You can just kind of sit here. You get non-aggression pacts with your neighbors. By and large, they leave you alone or they like you. They have a tolerance towards you, the nations to your north. Kind of what you do. It's very strange how easy it is to play this faction. Now, in terms of challenges, so if we look down here, you can see that I have just completed a challenge because my army is a bit damaged, and I've obviously got blood hosts to sack enough settlements. So how does these challenges work? So if we click on Challenges of Khorne, you will see on the left 3 different types of battles. Worthy battles, don't think of it as worthy. Easy, medium, hard. Okay, that's pretty much what it is. In reality, as easy is usually far too easy. It will give you different options where they are on the map, and you can go see what they are like. They tend to be a very odd collection. I think they are going to rework this at some point, because if you look at most of the opponents here, almost none of them are what we'll call order factions. They're almost all other chaos factions or greenskin factions or some lizardmen, but there's really no humans. There's pretty much no elves. I think there's dark elves and that's it. There's no wood elves. Cathay was one option and that was about it. It's a little unbalanced. There's nothing at all with the vampires, gotta say that, really. I think there was one with Vlad, but everything else, Vampire Coast is ignorable. Bretonia I've never seen. It's really strange. By and large, you're going to want to do worthy battles, at least in the first 10 to 15 turns. They are usually not full stacked armies, so you can usually win if you've got a full stack. Obviously, you got to be careful fighting legendaries like Marathi here, but by and large, if it gives you an easy chance of fighting the battle, you're going to win. Now, Over here on the right is boons. And if you recall, I mentioned that in order to get Khorne's favor, you needed to, it could be a struggle to maintain Khorne's favor outside of challenges. You're going to use the favor for boons, but you're also going to get favor from using boons. So, for example, this top one, Khorne's favor +5 after completing a challenge. You get +1 after winning a battle. You start with Vigor Tired. You're pretty much going to want to apply this for every single challenge you do. Now, why is that? If you look over here under the Blood God Stirs, actually, let's just go to an easy one. You will see it costs 5 favor to teleport to it. Completing a Khorne's challenge doesn't get you much favor relative to the amount you're spending to travel there. So you're going to want Bloodshell spell on most of the time. The other one you could take is Honor Bore for a reason, but the stat increase could make it a lot harder. You're better off having your units be tired, in my experience. Now, you can also use this if you're fighting a lot of battles on the map, like you've got Blood Hosts and stuff, but by and large, those are the 2 ways you're going to get the majority of your favor. Now, there are some other ones you can turn on here, and by and large, you can turn them on and off pretty simply, like right there, I've turned it on and off. Some of these have a higher maintenance cost. If you're not fighting battles and not doing challenges, turn them off. You'll thank me later when you have tons of favor to use. Brass Orbs here is a pretty cool one. It basically gets you one giant like spell ability. It's not really a spell because Khorne doesn't do spells. But it's really useful, very powerful, can make a big difference, especially if you send your lord into the middle of a bunch of enemies and then you drop this around him. It's quite impressive. Now, Khorne's presence here, spread Khornite corruption. By and large, where you're going to be completing challenges, you're not going to occupy the land, which makes this boon almost useless unless you're intending to actually conquer land, which you can do as this faction. The goals don't really support it, though. Khorne's Legions, if for some reason you're struggling with upkeep as Khorne, 25% upkeep on the faction leader's army and 8% on all other armies. Really strong, really expensive. Once you've done enough of these, you've got a lot of favor and you're actually going to conquer the map because you're bored of completing challenges. That's when you start using that one. By and large, before then, if you follow my advice of putting the reduction in upkeep building in your capital, you shouldn't have too many money problems because you're going to be teleporting to and from your capital. The other place you can teleport on the map is to your capital for 5 favor. Storms of War, movement speed, really never felt the need to use it even on higher modes. Summons a cult after completing a challenge. If you want to conquer the map, might be useful, but by and large, Khornite cults are not very useful compared to some of the others. In fact, cults in general just kind of are not that great. Terrors of Blood, get a Blood Host after completing a challenge. This one's actually fairly useful if you want to rampage through a whole area, teleport in, kill their legendary lord, summon Blood Hosts, rampage across the map, and leave. It sounds like a Khornite faction. In fact, I would say this faction feels more like a true Khornite faction than some of the others, which actually involve taking territory. These guys, they appear, fight a battle, and leave. Or a couple battles. So just to demonstrate it all, we'll do one. We'll do one quick one here. Bravery of the Fools. We'll look at this location. Okay, they're sieging Grecius. We'll click on it. We will travel to it. We are here. Now, it's important to note that we can't travel again. If you've traveled the same turn, if you're in a region owned by factions you are at war at. This is what I wanted to point out here. If you teleported and fighted an enemy and you don't take out the settlement and raise it or occupy it, you're stuck there until you can get away. You can't teleport at sea either, and obviously not while you're recruiting units. Just be aware it is a problem if you teleport into a huge empire, like, say, Sylvania here, just to fight Vlad, and then you can't get away because they're going to keep chasing you. Your army's too damaged. It's why, by and large, you don't want to do the super high challenges until you're ready for them. Now, once you're here, you simply declare war. There we go. Now, what have I done wrong here? Well, what I've done wrong is I haven't put on my favors. So we'll toss on 2 of those. We'll jump over here and we'll raise it. Just be aware that turning it on and off these on their own, I mean, it does cost them to activate, so don't do them totally randomly, but if you're not fighting a battle for 2 turns, that's when it's worth it. We fight the battle. Victory is ours. We can take favor. Healing. Healing's by and large what you're going to do. And there we go. We're done. Next turn, we teleport back to our capital, and we enjoy the favor. We also deactivate these 2. So we got from 8 to 26. And just like that, we completed another one. And just like that, our legendary lord gets stronger. It's a very simple play cycle for this faction, which is not a bad thing. It's kind of fun. And then you'll teleport back to Stormbrack Mount. In this case, I should have put Growing Rage in this territory. I made the mistake at this point going for Corruption, when the reality is I didn't need to worry about it. But as you can see, I've got excess money. Basically, I'm running 1 army. Technically, there's another one up here. Everyone's leaving me alone. There's really no reason to build an army unless I was going to conquer the world. So you're probably wondering, what are the strengths of this faction in particular? Well, teleporting's great. Let's mention that. Non-demonic units have a cheaper upkeep, so you should be using mortal units by and large. And as you can see, construction costs and time are cheaper there. Now, do remember that when you get a settlement, you can convert it either into a demonic settlement or a human settlement. You're pretty much going to want like 1, maybe 2 demonic settlements overall. The most of them should be human. It's where your strength lies. It's where you get your bonuses. By and large, the only way you'd ever start using demonic units is once you get up to these higher levels. You know, like soul grinders or skull cannons. Other than that, use humans. In terms of which edict to pick here, it's really up to you. The only reason I mention is Kill for Corn is really useful if you lose units. Their +1 recruitment rank and capacity is really handy to rebuild after tough battles. In terms of tech, I'm not going to go super in-depth with this. If you want to see a more in-depth detail on this, go look at the Skull Taker guide I did where I went through all the tech. By and large, you're going to want to do Slaughterer's Pride, go through the Warborn, get all of this done. Cheaper upkeep, maintenance. You're going to want to focus on, by and large, the non-demonic ones first, then get Killer's Trophy here, and by and large, you're all set. Everything else you can do over time. You're going to use a lot of infantry. In terms of technology, and I have been informed there is another one over here, which I had missed in my last guide, you're going to want to do Too Hateful to Die, basically build all this up. Ward saves is amazing. Denying the warp, really handy for casualty replenishment. Unfortunately, it takes like 25 battles. Nothing on Nothing, Skulls for the Skull Thrones, Sow Death, Reap Blood, Staunch Defender. That's about all you really need for tech. Everything else is you'd use for conquests. Now, in terms of, whoops, that's the wrong one. In terms of what upgrades do we want on our Lord, as in how do we spend our skill points? The easiest one I already mentioned was Route Marcher, Blood Feast, probably Call to Bloodletting, Unholy Resilience. So in case you lose your leader, he comes back. I never lost him. I chose to go Sustained by Slaughter here. Relentless Advance might have made more sense in the long run, but this is only healing demonic units, and since I wasn't using a lot of demonic units, it didn't make sense. But if you use demonic units, take that over Sustained by Slaughter, but a decrease of 10% plus an additional 8% upkeep. Money's no issue. This gets you another recruitment rank. It's great. Afterwards, you get your choices of where to go. You start with a point in Blood God's Vigor, which is quite nice. So when you win a battle, you get movement range, which allows you to chase down enemies. Very nice. You're going to want to get Eyes of Corn, replenishment in foreign territory, Eye of Corn, corruption. You have multiple different options here. I would personally recommend Revels in Carnage as one of your first ones, just so you get discouraged on leadership. -16 leadership when you attack enemies is really huge. Plus the bonus versus infantry is quite nice. Mortal Champion of Corn's good once you get higher level units, but the Expert Charge Defense, if for some reason you're fighting like Bretonia or Ogres or something where they're going to charge into you, you might get that. Otherwise, you're only really going to take it for the upkeep or later on. Devoted to the Blood Gods, very useful. Blood God. The physical resistance is really nice. Huge amount of damage from the Eye of Corn on this guy. It's very useful. Thirst for Challenge. If you're worried about enemy reinforcements, the easier way is to max out Lightning Strike rather than focus on Thirst for Challenge, but it does give you more combat ability. And then finally, Unbreakable Host. Any unit that gets above 7 is unbreakable. You cause terror and your lord is unbreakable. You're nigh on unstoppable by the time you get this. Assuming you're not losing your units in dumb battles, you should have high ranked units by the time you get there. Afterwards, honestly, just max out his yellow line. The only decision I might have made playing this one is I may have taken Dominating Presence early just to get some XP gain per turn on the army. Outside of that, I didn't even need the red line to power up your units. You get this wonderful Bloodthirst, a charge damage ability, as well as Deathbringer, which makes you do tons of damage for a very short time. You're really hard to kill. I don't think you're to the level of someone like Grimgor, but as you can see, I'm wandering around with 29 ward save, thanks to Talisman of Preservation and his unique and some unique weapons. If I throw on the Chainsword itself, it gets even nuttier. By and large, just focus on things that kill. Your various heroes you pick up should probably be spec'd into mainly combat, specifically ones to kill infantry. Killing Cav, that's not really a problem I found for this faction. You just send your lord in and he kills things. Let's see. Anything else specific about the faction people need to know? There's not a lot. It's basically you have one super strong army and you travel around fighting things. I will point out the fact that the Gaze of Corn plus the passive ability and weapon strength, it's a lot of it. You've got non-demonic. These are non-demonic units. You really don't need demons. You could justify taking like a couple exalted bloodletters just because of the flaming attacks, but otherwise mortal units. As you can see, these Chaos Warriors of Khorne, they're rank 8. I've had them since the beginning of the game. I feel really no reason to replace them. I could replace them with higher level units, but the only thing I'd do would be Chaos Warriors of Khorne at this point. So the only other thing I can think of to go over is be friends with the other demonic factions. Most of them like you are starting on aggressive with you, so there's no real reason to pick fights with them. They're gonna ignore you to a large degree. There's really no reason to pick a fight with them. The only people you might pick a fight with is the Masters of Innovation or Kislev if they get aggressive, but by and large you're gonna have warning time. If you fully fortified this area with forts, you usually can get your lord back in time. As you can see, I could afford another army sitting around in this territory, but there's no real point when your lord can get back to your capital every turn, assuming you have enough favor. You're very hard to take out. You could theoretically just do like a one settlement run if you really wanted to challenge. Just don't either Stormbrak or probably better off Karak Doom, and then give all this to the Everchosen or something for an alliance, and then just ignore territory pretty much for the rest of the game. Another interesting one up here, there's a Khornite faction that tends to get killed off early on. If you confederate them, which is really possible, just be aware that you'll probably get attacked by either the Demons of Chaos or the Nurgle faction up here. They can be a bit of an issue. By and large, don't confederate them, is my advice. Play defensive, play aggressive in terms of teleporting. Don't attack anybody with teleporting who's nearby. Go against people like Cathay, the Lizard Man, Dark Elves, none of whom will be close enough to you to actually harm your lands. And since you teleport away, they can't chase you. Anyway, I think that will be it for this guide. As I said, pretty short, pretty simple. It's basically like the Lizard Man guy, the orange one, Oxalotl or whatever. Except that you don't get all the cool sanctums. Instead, you get corn challenges, which is, in my opinion, less awesome. Anyway, thank you guys all for watching. Hopefully it helped. It's a fairly simple faction. Feels similar to Oxalotl and the Changeling, where you're really not interacting with the map at large. You're kind of playing your own campaign. See you guys all in another video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.